Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us at the MarketSite studio in Times Square, New York City, we have Tom McGee, CEO of ICSC, to discuss Gen Z purchasing power and shopping experience preferences. Tom, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thanks, it's great to be with you.
And ICSC just came out with a new Gen Z report. And between the two of us, we have 5 Gen Zers, so I took particular interest in it. And they've been designated a number of stereotypes about their behaviors. Did you find the findings to be true? If not, what surprised you?
I did find them to be true. I think they might be surprising to kind of the general population, but those of us that are, parents of Gen Zs, I think see some similarities between the survey findings and our own kids' behaviors. One is this is a generation that's very career driven. They're focused on the future. Generally very financially responsible, use cash or cash-like features like a debit card and so forth. Clearly still shop in stores and actually enjoy that social experience. And very socially conscious. I mean, they are focused on obviously a whole host of social issues, but also focused on well-being and mental health, which is, I think, a particular note given we live in a social media dominated society.
What is most important to Gen Z in terms of their shopping experience, and what can retailers do to meet these preferences and capture this demographic?
Authenticity is clearly important to them, but I think, really speed, value. This is a price-conscious consumer, at least at this stage of their life. And so they value price and price sensitivity, but also speed and efficiency. This is a generation that's grown up with the digital tools, and so if they're going to shop in store or shop online, they expect there to be a certain speed, a certain efficiency to transacting the behavior, and certainly a synergy between what happens online and what happens in a store. If they're going to buy online, they expect to pick up in a store. They expect that to be somewhat frictionless.
That's what I thought was interesting with the survey, because they did grow up, Amazon, point and click, and at least with my Gen Zers, they are very cost conscious. They do look for deals, they do look for sales, which was a pleasant thing. Hopefully, it's a sign we raised them right. But for the digitally native generation, what does a physical store have to offer the Gen Z population when they come in?
Well, certainly, it can't be boring. I mean, it needs to be well merchandised. I mean, if it's just a transaction to just fulfill an order, they could do that online. I mean, they want experiential, they want things in stock. They want to have a relationship with that store. To your point around financially responsible too, I think one of the things that as I reflected upon that, this is a digitally native generation. They also grew up in the shadow of the financial crisis and the shadow of the pandemic and the ramifications of the pandemic, inflation and so forth. And they've seen their parents, have to deal with those things. And so I think all of those things, mix into their psyche in regards to how they go about shopping.
What can we expect as Gen Z matures into greater spending power?
Well, I think you're going to find, if the findings today continue to hold, I mean, this is going to be a very financially responsible, and I would call it pragmatic generation. This is a generation that values, efficiency, speed, experience over just a product. They are not necessarily looking for the most famous brand. They're looking for cost consciousness. While they'll be influenced by social media, because I think we're all influenced by social media, one of the things that I thought was quite promising was they're also most influenced, however, by their family and friends. And I think that speaks well to this generation. I'm a big fan of the Gen Z generation, having two Gen Z daughters, and I find this generation to be one that should encourage hope, not just for the retail industry, but really for the country as a whole.
I think they're very creative and resourceful.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I notice, with my Gen Zers and their friends and so forth. But let's switch gears and talk about commercial real estate for a moment. There's been a big impact from the pandemic and from the hybrid work environment. How has that impacted downtown areas for the commercial spaces, and what do you think the path is forward? Because I was in a mall local to us, Bridgewater, I think like 20-25% of the stores were empty.
Well, I think, first of all, I think the central business district, here we're in Manhattan, in Midtown Manhattan, I think areas like this will be challenged because of, obviously the office occupancy, and that, with a lack of office occupancy, that impacts traffic, retail traffic, restaurant traffic in areas that are very dependent upon office. Actually, more broadly, suburban retail in particular is doing exceptionally well. I mean, there are some malls that, are struggling, but that was the case before the pandemic. But if you look at your traditional open air, grocery anchored, Target, Walmart anchored center, they are doing exceptionally well right now. Leasing demand is the strongest I've seen it in my time in the industry. And I'll give you a stat that kind of speaks to why that's the case. Over the course of the last 15 years, retail sales in the U.S. have grown by 82%. GDP's grown by almost 30%. Population's grown by almost 10%. Shopping center gross leasable areas only increased by about 6.5%. So you've had this increase in demand while you really haven't had new supply come on the market. And particularly in that open air segment, which is high in demand, it's close to where people live. People are working from home more, they have more time to shop as a result of that. And retailers are also using the stores not just for traditional shopping, but also to fulfill online orders. And so these stores have become mini fulfillment centers. As it relates to the mall sector, there are some exceptionally strong malls. There's some malls that are struggling. But holistically, the mall segment is still a relatively small piece of the overall physical retail environment.
So when you think about strength going forward, do you expect it to be the trends that we're seeing today, where it's the shopping center that has multiple roles for the store?
I really do. I think that we are entering into a new era where the store is going to serve multiple capacities for a retailer. It is the most cost-effective form of distribution for a retailer. I mean, the thing that is not well known is that online delivery tends to eat up significant profit margins for retailers. And so they really do want to use the store network to both build brand, build connection with their customers, to fulfill traditional shopping, but also to fulfill orders, whether they can get the customer to come in the store or whether they ship directly from the store.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, right? Every time you go in the store, oh, by the way, I forgot I needed this. Or you see something
Right.
at the counter, or, oh, I'll spend another couple extra bucks on this.
Exactly.
All right,
exactly.
Tom, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us
Thank
on
you,
Trade
Jill.
Talks. And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.